Have you ever found yourself making a decision that in hindsight felt completely illogical? Or maybe you've observed someone else acting in a way that seemed driven purely by emotion, with no regard for reason. It's almost as if at times our feelings hijack our brains, leading us down paths we wouldn't normally choose. This isn't just a quirk of human nature, it's a fundamental aspect of how our minds work. It's the intricate dance between emotion and cognition, a partnership that shapes our thoughts, judgments, and ultimately, our lives. Consider the famous case of Phineas Gage, a 19th century railroad worker. In 1848, Gage survived a horrific accident where an iron rod pierced his skull, destroying a significant portion of his frontal lobe. Miraculously, he lived, but he wasn't the same Phineas Gage. Before the accident, he was known as a responsible, intelligent, and socially adept individual. Afterward, his personality transformed. He became impulsive, erratic, profane, and incapable of making sound decisions. His cognitive abilities, like memory and language, remained largely intact, but his ability to integrate emotional information into his decision-making process was profoundly damaged. Gage's case provided early, compelling evidence that specific brain regions, particularly the prefrontal cortex, are crucial for the interplay between emotion and cognition. We often think of emotion and reason as opposing forces, locked in a constant battle for control. We picture reason as the calm, collected strategist, while emotion is the impulsive, unpredictable rebel. But this is a false dichotomy. Emotion and cognition are not adversaries. They are inseparable partners, constantly influencing each other in a complex and dynamic interplay. They are two sides of the same coin, working together to shape our experience of the world. Think of it like a symphony orchestra. Emotion is the string section, providing the rich, vibrant, and often dramatic undertones. Cognition is the woodwinds and brass, adding structure, melody, and harmony. Neither section can create a complete masterpiece on its own. They need each other. Let's define what we mean by emotion. Emotions are not just fleeting feelings. They are complex, multifaceted responses to events or stimuli that have significance for us. They involve three interconnected components. First, there's the physiological component, the changes in our bodies. Think of the racing heart, the sweaty palms, the rapid breathing that accompany fear, or the warm feeling in your chest when you experience joy. Second, there's the behavioral component, the outward expressions of our emotions. This includes facial expressions, like a smile or a frown, changes in our tone of voice, and even our body posture. And finally, there's the subjective component, the conscious experience of the emotion, the feeling itself. This is what we label as happiness, sadness, anger, or fear. It is important to differentiate between emotions, feelings, and moods. Emotions are typically intense, short-lived reactions to specific triggers. Think of a sudden fright when you hear a loud noise. Feelings, on the other hand, are the subjective experiences of those emotions. They are how we interpret and make sense of the physiological and behavioral changes. Moods are more diffuse, longer-lasting emotional states. They are like a background hum that colors our perception of the world, making us more likely to experience certain emotions. Think of being in a generally grumpy or cheerful mood for a whole day. There's a general consensus around the existence of basic, universal emotions. These include joy, sadness, fear, anger, disgust, and surprise. These emotions are thought to be innate, hardwired into our brains, and are expressed similarly across different cultures. Beyond these basic emotions, we experience a vast array of more complex emotions, such as guilt, shame, pride, envy, and gratitude. These complex emotions often arise from social interactions and involve more intricate cognitive appraisals. So, how exactly do these emotions influence our thinking? One powerful mechanism is through what psychologists call emotional biases. These are systematic ways in which our emotions can skew our perception, judgment, and decision-making. Let's consider the mood-congruent bias. This is our tendency to interpret information in a way that is consistent with our current mood. If you're feeling happy, you're more likely to notice positive things around you, to recall positive memories, and to interpret ambiguous events in a favorable light. Conversely, if you're feeling sad, you're more likely to focus on the negative, to remember negative experiences, and to interpret situations in a pessimistic way. It's as if your mood acts like a filter, coloring your perception of reality. Another powerful bias is loss aversion, which is closely linked to the emotion of fear. Loss aversion refers to our tendency to feel the pain of a loss more strongly than the pleasure of an equivalent gain. For example, the disappointment of losing $20 is typically felt more intensely than the joy of finding $20. This bias can significantly influence our decisions, making us more risk-averse and more likely to stick with the status quo, even when change might be beneficial. We're more motivated to avoid a potential loss than to pursue a potential gain. Then, there's the affect heuristic. This is our tendency to rely on our gut feelings and our immediate emotional reactions when making judgments and decisions, particularly when we're under pressure or facing complex situations. Instead of carefully weighing the pros and cons, we often go with what feels right. While this can be a quick and efficient way to make decisions, it can also lead us astray, especially if our emotional reactions are not aligned with the objective reality of the situation. Emotions also profoundly influence our attention and memory. Think about a time you experienced a highly emotional event, like a car accident, a wedding, or the birth of a child. Chances are you remember that event much more vividly than less emotionally charged experiences. This is because intense emotions narrow our focus of attention, making us pay close attention to the details of the emotional event. This heightened attention, in turn, strengthens the encoding of the memory, making it more likely to be stored and retrieved later. This phenomenon is sometimes referred to as flashbulb memory, because the memory is as clear and detailed as if a flashbulb had illuminated the scene. However, this heightened focus on emotionally salient details can come at a cost. While we might remember the central aspects of an emotional event very clearly, we might be less accurate in recalling the peripheral details. Our attention is so narrowly focused on the emotionally charged elements that we miss other, potentially important information. Emotions also influence our reasoning and judgment in more subtle ways. Positive emotions like joy and excitement tend to broaden our thinking, making us more open to new ideas, more creative, and more flexible in our problem solving. We're more likely to see connections between seemingly unrelated concepts and to generate novel solutions. Negative emotions, on the other hand, can narrow our focus, making us more analytical and detail-oriented. This can be beneficial in situations that require careful scrutiny and attention to detail, but it can also hinder our ability to see the bigger picture and to think creatively. Consider the impact of emotions on risk assessment. When we're feeling anxious or fearful, we tend to overestimate the likelihood of negative outcomes and to be more risk-averse. We're more likely to focus on potential threats and to avoid situations that involve uncertainty. Conversely, when we're feeling happy or excited, we tend to underestimate risks and to be more optimistic in our assessments. We're more likely to focus on potential rewards and to take chances. Emotions are not just byproducts of our thoughts. They are also powerful motivators of our behavior. They provide the impetus for us to act. Fear motivates us to flee from danger. Anger motivates us to confront a threat or injustice. Love motivates us to connect with others and form bonds. Sadness can motivate us to seek comfort and support. Each emotion has a corresponding action tendency, a built-in drive to behave in a certain way. Let's delve a bit into the neural underpinnings of this fascinating interplay between emotion and cognition. Several brain regions play crucial roles. One key player is the amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure deep within the brain. The amygdala is often described as the brain's emotional center, and it plays a particularly important role in processing fear and anger. It receives sensory information from the environment and quickly evaluates its emotional significance. If it detects a potential threat, it triggers a cascade of physiological and behavioral responses, preparing us to fight or flee. The amygdala doesn't operate in isolation. It has extensive connections with other brain regions, most notably the prefrontal cortex, or PFC. The prefrontal cortex is the seat of our higher-level cognitive functions, such as planning, reasoning, and decision-making. It plays a crucial role in regulating our emotions, in evaluating the consequences of our actions, and in making decisions that are influenced by both emotional and rational considerations. The interplay between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex is crucial for adaptive behavior. The amygdala provides the initial emotional response, while the prefrontal cortex helps us to interpret that response, to consider the context, and to make a more informed decision about how to act. Another important brain region is the nucleus accumbens, which is part of the brain's reward system. The nucleus accumbens is activated when we experience pleasure or anticipate reward. It plays a key role in motivation and reinforcement learning, driving us to seek out experiences that are associated with positive emotions. Dopamine, a neurotransmitter, is heavily involved in the functioning of the nucleus accumbens. The insula is another brain region that deserves mention. The insula is involved in our awareness of our bodily states, our interoception, and in our subjective experience of emotions. It helps us to feel what's happening inside our bodies, to sense our heart rate, our breathing, our gut feelings. This awareness of our bodily states is an integral part of our emotional experience. And finally, the hippocampus, critical for forming new memories, interacts significantly with the amygdala. This connection helps explain why emotional events are often so vividly remembered. The emotional intensity, signaled by the amygdala, enhances the memory consolidation processes in the hippocampus. Given the pervasive influence of emotions on our thinking, it's clear that learning to manage our emotions effectively is crucial for our well-being and for making sound decisions. This is where emotional regulation comes in. Emotional regulation refers to the strategies we use to influence the intensity, duration, and expression of our emotions. It's not about suppressing or eliminating emotions. It's about learning to manage them in a healthy and adaptive way. One powerful technique for emotional regulation is cognitive reappraisal. This involves changing the way we think about a situation in order to alter its emotional impact. For example, if you're feeling anxious about a presentation, you might reappraise the situation by focusing on the opportunity to share your knowledge and expertise, rather than dwelling on the possibility of making a mistake. Cognitive reappraisal can be a very effective way to reduce the intensity of negative emotions and to promote a more balanced perspective. Mindfulness is another valuable tool for emotional regulation. Mindfulness involves paying attention to the present moment without judgment. It's about cultivating an awareness of your thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations without getting carried away by them. Mindfulness practices, such as meditation, can help you to develop a greater sense of emotional awareness and to become less reactive to your emotions. Expressing your emotions in a healthy way is also important. This doesn't mean venting uncontrollably or lashing out at others. It means finding constructive ways to communicate your feelings, whether it's through talking to a trusted friend, journaling, or engaging in creative activities. The ability to perceive, understand, use, and manage emotions effectively is often referred to as emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is not a fixed trait. It's a set of skills that can be developed and improved over time. People with high emotional intelligence are better able to understand their own emotions and the emotions of others, to use emotions to guide their thinking and behavior, and to manage their emotions in a way that promotes positive outcomes. They're better able to navigate social situations, to build strong relationships, and to cope with stress and adversity. To recap, emotion and cognition are inextricably linked. They are not separate or opposing forces, but rather interconnected systems that constantly influence each other. Our emotions shape our attention, our memory, our reasoning, our judgments, and our decisions. The amygdala, prefrontal cortex, nucleus accumbens, insula, and hippocampus are key brain regions involved in this intricate interplay. Emotions are not necessarily enemies of reason. They can be adaptive and provide valuable information. Fear can protect us from danger. Anger can motivate us to fight for what we believe in. Love can foster connection and cooperation. However, when emotions are unregulated, they can lead to biased thinking, poor decisions, and impulsive behavior. Developing emotional regulation skills, such as cognitive reappraisal, mindfulness, and healthy emotional expression, is essential for well-being and for effective thinking. And cultivating emotional intelligence can enhance our ability to navigate the complexities of human interaction and to live more fulfilling lives. Think about your own experiences. How have your emotions influenced your thoughts and decisions? Have you ever made a decision in the heat of the moment that you later regretted? Have you ever let fear hold you back from pursuing an opportunity? Conversely, have you ever experienced the power of positive emotions to boost your creativity and problem-solving abilities? Have you ever felt the surge of motivation that comes from feeling passionate about a project? The interplay between emotion and cognition is not just an abstract scientific concept, it's a fundamental aspect of the human experience. It shapes who we are, how we interact with the world, and the choices we make. By understanding this interplay, by becoming more aware of our own emotions and how they influence our thinking, we can gain greater control over our lives and strive to become the best versions of ourselves. We can learn to harness the power of our emotions, not as a force that overwhelms our reason, but as a source of wisdom, guidance, and motivation. The goal isn't to eliminate emotions, but to cultivate a harmonious relationship between our hearts and our minds.